In the decade following World War II, the Soviet Union developed ballistic missiles as a means of countering the West's enormous superiority in long-range bombers. The enormous size and weight of first-generation atomic and thermonuclear weapons was a primary factor in Soviet missile design.
At that time, Soviet hydrogen warhead weighed up to 5 metric tons. That is why to launch such a heavy warhead, they needed a very large booster.
It was, in fact, a giant. The R-7 booster was 100 feet tall and weighed 600,000 pounds. It was powered by no less than 32 rocket engines, all igniting simultaneously. Although it was the world's first ICBM, the R-7 achieved fame for carrying a less threatening but more significant payload. The first man-made object to orbit the Earth.
Today, a new moon is in the sky, a 23-inch metal sphere placed in orbit by a Russian rocket. You are hearing the actual signals transmitted by the Earth-circling satellite, one of the great scientific feats of the age.
Sputnik 1 was harmless enough, but the steady beeping of its transmitters spelled defeat to millions of Americans.
There was a real fear on the part of the American public that the United States was somehow behind the Soviet Union in terms of scientific and technical capability, and we had to do something to catch up.
President Eisenhower reassures the nation that Russia's success with the first satellite does not indicate a serious lag in American rocket research.
I consider our country's satellite program to be well designed and properly scheduled to achieve the scientific purposes for which it was initiated.
The American satellite program had begun 2 years before, with the challenge of orbiting a device in conjunction with the International Geophysical Year, or IGY. The Army proposed using its Redstone rocket, developed by Wernher von Braun's team and already in the advanced testing stage. Redstone was designed to deliver an atomic weapon a distance of 200 miles. It was essentially a 69-foot-long Super V-2, but built of aluminum and with integral fuel tanks. With modifications, von Braun's Redstone could get a small payload into orbit.
His biggest advantage was that the rockets he was proposing were in being. So he said, I can do it quickly. And he introduced the idea that we're racing with the Russians. And we need to do it fast.
In a bitter disappointment for von Braun, the Army proposal was rejected in favor of a new design introduced by the Naval Research Lab, a three-stage derivative of their Viking rocket called Vanguard.
Von Braun criticized us that we were proposing a rocket on paper. Well, he was right. None of the Vanguard had ever been built. It was based on experience that we had with the Viking and the Arrow B, but the design was brand new.
All hopes of beating the Soviets were dashed with the success of the first Sputnik in October 1957. The Soviets had won the race into space. A month later, they launched the 1,000-pound Sputnik 2. The Eisenhower presidency was engulfed in a firestorm of criticism.
There is no doubt that in a few more years, the Russians will leave us behind and way behind.
The idea of relying solely on the sophisticated new Vanguard to put up America's first satellite became less appealing. The Army was instructed to get its modified Redstone, called Jupiter C, ready to go. General John Medeiros, head of the Army Ballistic Missile Agency, broke the news to von Braun.
I promised the Secretary of the Army that we would be ready in 90 days or less. Let's go, Werner.
Meanwhile, Vanguard's testing phase had been cut short to meet an accelerated launch date. At Cape Canaveral on December 6, 1956, a 3-pound satellite was carefully placed on top of the first ever fully assembled Vanguard.
We hadn't planned to do that. That vehicle was a test vehicle. It was the first 3-stage Vanguard ever put together. But, of course, the eyes of the entire world were on us then. This was to be America's response. I was devastated by it. One of the most terrible things I have ever seen in the rocket game. We knew it was very risky. We knew we were taking a tremendous chance, that we had never tested this before. But nevertheless, we were hoping it would succeed.
It was now the Army's turn. The hopes of the nation depended on the activity inside the Jupiter C compound at Cape Canaveral. On the evening of January 30th, 1958, the JPL-developed Explorer-1 satellite was hoisted atop the rocket. The countdown continued into the climactic final moments.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire command. Fire command. Ignition. Base.
At 10:48 p.m., the Jupiter C rose smoothly from the firing stand. 1 hour and 53 minutes after liftoff, Explorer-1 was picked up by a tracking station in California. America's first artificial satellite was orbiting the Earth. The challenge of the Sputniks had finally been met. 3 months later, Vanguard, which had come to symbolize national humiliation, launched its tiny sphere 3,500 miles into space. Today, it is the oldest man-made object circling the Earth, and will remain so for the next 1,000 years.